Well, if getting rich sounds like a good idea this morning, you want to listen to this. We are joined this morning by a man who has spent the last quarter century studying the thought processes and the attitudes of world-class performers. His new book is called How Rich People Think, in which he talks about 100 different ways in which the middle class and the wealthy differ in their mindset about money and success. And we are pleased to welcome Steve Siebold. Nice to meet you, Steve.
Yeah, nice to meet you.
So what would you say is the #1 way in which the middle class and the wealthy think differently about money?
I think it's about a relationship. I mean, it's about having a positive, healthy relationship with money as opposed to a negative relationship with money, which is what most of us have.
Now, as someone who comes from the middle class, I can speak for them, and they would say, well, wait a minute, if you've got money, of course you've got a healthy relationship with money. Wouldn't I love to be in those shoes?
It's the chicken or the egg, right?
Yeah, exactly. You nailed it. Right.
I think it's almost like most of us have a relationship with money like a bitter divorced person has with relationships, new relationships. And what's the chance of them succeeding in a new relationship when they're thinking people are out to get me, it's negative, I'm never going to give my heart away again, and that type of thing. And that's, I think, how most of us approach money.
Safe to say that if you are in a situation where you have a job, which most people are, and they work for an employer, that the dynamic of that relationship is such that you would not be hired unless it was more, I think, more profitable for the employer than for you, because otherwise, what's the point in hiring you?
Absolutely.
Is that correct?
It's all about creating value. I mean, that's the whole thing, and that's why if someone's looking for a job right now, they need to find a way to create value for the employer that's greater than the amount of fear the employer's feeling in terms of hiring.
If you were in a situation, though, where you're working check to check and you're barely covering your bills, how do you begin to think about breaking that cycle to do something that will create more wealth for you, that will get you beyond the check-to-check stage?
That's the hardest part, no question. That's why I wrote this book. I think study the differences in thinking between the middle class and the wealthy class, the world class, and start to adopt those beliefs, those philosophies, and those habits, and things start to change a little over time.
Not to change the subject here, but I wonder if it relates or not. But when we had the bailout, it felt like that was a case where you had the wealthy saying to the mass middle class, you guys got to bail us out. And in a sense, it's like, well, wait a minute, you guys are supposedly the robber barons here that made these choices and took the risk and whatnot, calculated risk. Why aren't you prepared to lose? Why does it have to be always a win-win? And now you want the people that have just been conservative and saving as a collective to bail you out.
I would agree with that completely. I mean, what they've explained to me is that some of the companies just had to, for the infrastructure, the economy had to be bailed out. I disagree with the bailout stuff. Absolutely.
It's interesting to hear you say that. You let the market work.
Let the market do what it's always done. I mean, the millionaires, you could take all their money, and in 12 months they'd have it all back anyway.
And why is that?
Because they think like rich people, and that's why they acquire wealth, because again they have a positive relationship with money, and they believe they can acquire money because they've acquired it in the past. Once you know you can do it, it's not that difficult to do.
We've got less than a minute left, but I do want to touch on, I thought one of the keynotes you got on was that middle class people look at money as a linear function and the wealthy look at it as nonlinear. Explain that.
We're used to and trained in school, up all through college, to even in college, to think about money in terms of trading hours for dollars or time for money. And the rich don't get rich that way. The rich get rich in nonlinear terms. In other words, they use the compounding effect and their contacts and their credibility and their knowledge to leverage money as opposed to earn money the difficult way, in terms of labor.
I read as much as I could of the book last night. It is an easy read. I highly recommend it. And I love the way you've broken it down into really short chapters that are on specific points about the differences in thought, and it's 100 of them. It is called How Rich People Think, and it could be subtitled, and also How the Middle Class Thinks, because it contrasts the two in every chapter, by Steve Siebold. Steve, pleasure to meet you.
Thanks.
Great book. Good read. All right.